Quick content note before we get started. This episode briefly mentions self-harm as part of Lee's story. It's not graphic, but if that's a sensitive topic for you, please take care while listening. Imagine surviving emotional trauma just to be taken out by boredom. I don't know about you guys, but I have absolutely stayed in relationships longer than necessary purely out of curiosity. Like, let's see just how bad this gets. You can love someone and still not love them enough to compromise with them. And that's fine until you marry them. If you marry someone knowing you don't love them enough to do the work, that makes you selfish. That's basically trying to trick your spouse into living a life of mediocrity. I'm going to admit something I've actually never said on this podcast before. I've talked about my first marriage a lot. That one was educational, loudly educational, but I've never talked about my second marriage at all. And I think part of that is because when something isn't explosive, it's harder to explain. For the most part, my second marriage wasn't dramatic. It wasn't chaotic, and it wasn't cruel. It was quiet, and sometimes quiet can fool you. I kept telling myself one phrase over and over. At least. At least he's kind. At least he's calm. At least he's not like my first husband. And compared to what I had survived before, that felt like progress, like safety. But there's a difference between safe and connected. As always, I only use real names of people I talk about if they are deceased or if I have asked them and they gave permission. Otherwise, I use fake names to protect the not so innocent. So let's call my second husband Fred.
This ghost really doesn't need any introduction.
There were a few different issues going on in that marriage, and some of those are stories for another day. But I will tell you about one of the issues we had in the beginning of our relationship. Fred didn't really have opinions about anything. Politics, religion, what color to paint the dining room. I would try to start conversations, and it felt like I was interviewing drywall. At first, that felt oddly peaceful. I think after chaos, a little dullness feels like a spa day. But eventually, it felt like living with a human screensaver. And one of the first times I really noticed it was before we were even married. It was April 15th. 2013, the day of the Boston Marathon bombing. It was everywhere. Every TV channel, every social media outlet, the whole country was frozen. Fred and I are sitting on the couch watching coverage for hours. Well, I was watching the coverage. And I'm commenting on what's happening, trying to process it out loud like a normal human being who understands that history is unfolding in real time. And it's just crickets on his side of the couch. Not even a glance up from his phone. He's scrolling through the same 20 memes he laughed at yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. I'm over here like, this is insane, I can't believe this. And the whole time, Fred's like, which, for the record, is not engagement, that's a sound effect. Eventually, I just stopped trying, like I always did. At some point, I grab my phone and I open up Facebook, and I see that 30 minutes earlier, when I was literally sitting next to him, trying to have a conversation about a national tragedy, he had posted a meme. It was 2 pictures side by side, Justin Bieber and Dimebag Darrell. The caption said, "If you know who this is, but you don't know who this is, you are what is wrong with this world," on the day of the Boston Marathon bombing. Seriously? The world is actively on fire, and this is the hill you've chosen? And I just remember staring at that post and thinking, wow, the lights are on, but nobody's home. Because apparently he did have strong opinions, just not about anything important. Not about anything happening in the country, just about early 2000s pop culture hierarchy. And that was one of the first tiny cracks. Not explosive, not dramatic, just quiet disconnection. And I ignored it, because at least is very persuasive. Fast forward to just a little while later when we were newly married. I was going to the store, and when I left, Fred and my son were in the living room. And so Fred is on his phone, looking probably at the same 20 memes, and my son is playing and the TV's on. I come home an hour and a half later. Same positions, same silence, same glowing rectangle of doom. Later on, I asked my son, who was maybe 5 or 6 at the time, "What did you guys talk about while I was gone?" And he said, "Nothing." Literally not a single word was spoken during that hour and a half that I was gone. Now, to be fair, that did get better. They ended up building a really wonderful bond. My son came to love Fred deeply. But I had to admit something uncomfortable to myself. I wasn't choosing connection. I was choosing the absence of harm. And absence of harm is not the same as the presence of connection. My aha moment actually didn't even happen at home. It happened at work. My boss at the time and I had a fantastic working relationship. In fact, Fred was the one who started jokingly calling him my work husband and me his work wife. It didn't bother him in the least because he knew there was nothing to be jealous of. We never thought the other one was cheating or thinking about it, so that was never a problem in our marriage. In fact, the physical part of our marriage was never a problem. I think we stayed together as long as we did because we were so intimately connected in the physical sense. But my boss was one of the smartest men I've ever known. I started looking forward to conversations with him in a way that made me pause. It was nothing romantic or inappropriate. It was just ideas and debate, intellectual energy. During the day, my brain was getting lit up, and at night, at home, other parts of me were lit up. And I'm over here thinking, is this wrong? Or have I just figured out how to have the best of both worlds? Because, let's be honest, you can orgasm your way through a lot of red flags. Sex can feel like connection, but chemistry is not compatibility. And eventually I stopped asking myself, is this technically cheating? And started asking, why am I living in halves? Because I didn't feel guilty. I just felt divided. And what I realized was simple. I deserve both, but from the same man. I deserve someone who meets my mind and my body. Someone I don't have to compartmentalize myself for. And that realization forced me into something uncomfortable. Self-inventory. Not what happened to me, but who I was becoming while I was coping. And that's where today's conversation really begins, because it's easy to tell the story of what we survived. It's harder to admit the ways we adapted, the armor we built, the parts of ourselves that weren't as healthy as we thought. My guest, Lee, has the courage to talk about that part. The part where you stop blaming your past and start examining your patterns. And that kind of honesty is rare. Welcome to No Hard Feelings. Kinda. The podcast where we talk about the stuff people usually bury, and then we sprinkle in humor because crying is dehydrating. Today, I'm joined by Lee Risby, host of Social Harmony Time to Talk. He's a former chef and walking proof that self-awareness doesn't arrive politely. Lee grew up shy, experienced physical abuse, turned pain inward through self-harm, then later turned it outward with anger, attitude, and emotional armor. He built a life, marriage, parenthood, while still unhealed, until everything cracked open and forced a reckoning, not just with what happened to him, but with who he became. Lee, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, awesome. Me too. Me too. You know, before we kind of get into adulthood and how that, created sort of a tough outer shell, what were you like growing up? What were you like as a young man?
Well, I suppose as a kid, I don't know, a regular kid. I mean, I can't remember a great deal of when I was little. I think I was just, your average. I was never the standout, I suppose, in my own little circles, I could probably, give the impression that I was a bit more confident than I was. But I don't know. I think I sort of grew up thinking that I was a bit less than.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, this is something I've only sort of come to in recent years, you look back and you think, yeah, that's why I did that. I suppose moving towards teens and what have you, you're trying to find who you are. You're trying to develop a personality. And at that point, I think I tried to be something I'm not. I'm trying to be cooler than I was. I was very much, I don't know, I had my eye on trend so that I could parrot that I knew that I was clued up about things and what have you. But in reality, it was an act. I don't know. Like I said, when I was a little kid, I got validation. I got, pleasant pats on the back or whatever it was when I did something right, when I achieved something. So I quickly equated, popularity or people liking me and what have you with doing, how useful I was, that kind of thing. I mean, like I said, in my own little circle around my own little people who I absolutely knew, I was probably quite a different character. And then when I was out of my comfort zone, I became really quite quiet, quite closed off. I mean, I put that for the longest time. I'd sort of say, "Oh yeah, I'm an observer. I just want to see what's going on." But in reality, I think I just felt a bit awkward and just didn't know. I wanted to say the right things. I wanted to be what people wanted me to be, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
So that was me, I suppose.
Right. Well, and that's totally relatable. I think, most kids as we're growing up sort of at one time or another, feel that way, experience that. You've shared that you experienced physical abuse. What did it teach you about yourself and about other people?
Well, I mean, and I'll say again, these are things that I've only come to later on. Now, at the time, I suppose I grew up, and this started from quite a young age. I mean, I remember this sort of happening when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And it's, I remember reading something later, and it says an abused child doesn't hate their parents; they hate themselves. And I
Yeah.
resonated with that. I thought, what have I done wrong? What do I need to do differently? You know,
Right. Right.
and when you're a little kid, you haven't got a frame of reference. And I must sort of point out now that I'm not going to say my parents were bad parents. And looking back, there were probably some things going on there. But as a kid, I couldn't have been expected to know that. It wasn't my job to deal with that.
Right.
And so, it's, I don't know, quickly I became, I suppose, quite self-reliant in a lot of ways. But then a lot of that was with the added caveat that if I did things well and did things good, then I'm not going to say got rewarded. It's not necessarily that, but I sort of figured that, well, that means that I won't get a bash today,
Right. Right.
So it
Yeah.
was weird. And I became very hyper tuned to moods.
Mm-hmm.
You walk into a room, something feels a bit off,
Yeah.
and I'd sort of, do that central nervous system thing. I'd just sort of tighten up and think, right, shit, what do I need to do to get
Right.
myself out of this? How do I need to keep myself safe?
Mm-hmm.
And there was that. So I suppose, and because this came from my mum, trust was very much ruptured. I would never go to my parents, like if I was struggling with anything or if I was upset about anything or whatever, because there was no currency in it as far as I could see.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this started, like I said, from about 4 years old.
Yeah. And you've been very open about different things and how, like, as you got a little older, self-harm had kind of entered the picture. During that time, what was it doing for you emotionally?
Well, it was a weird one. I sort of, like I said, I when I was out of my circle of people, then I became quite closed off. And so after leaving high school and going into, I started going to college and whatever, but it were all these new people who I didn't know and that I wasn't comfortable around. So I withdrew. So a lot of times, I was very artistic and what have you. So a lot of times I'd end up at night just sat up, drawing, writing things out, very, just writing in diaries and such like. And I don't know, like looking back now, I wasn't fully aware of this. I've just felt a lot of pain. I just felt a lot of sadness, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know, what was up with it. And I suppose at that age, this is when I was, say about 17, maybe 18, thereabouts. Right. I don't know, I suppose you're still a child in a lot of ways, and you still have that childlike view of, I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one with these struggles. Nobody understands me, that kind of thing. But socially, I was very inept, so I had nobody to talk to about this. And also, again, I don't know if it's just a thing about where I grew up, but I think most teenagers, you put yourself out there. And this is, back when. Now it seems to be a fashion to talk about everything. But back then, you wouldn't put yourself out there and say, I'm really struggling. My mental health is not doing well, because it wasn't a buzzword then. It wasn't anything.
Yep.
And so you suffer in silence, or like I did. And
you're right. You're right.
So, it was one of them. I don't know. I possibly on some level went on a bit of a, like a bit of an emo spiral and thought, all right, I want to end myself and all that. I didn't, but I think it was like dragging this craft knife up my arm and across my stomach. I don't know. It felt like I was doing something, if that makes sense. it's, it wasn't like, I don't know, I got some adrenaline rush out of it or anything like that. There was no physical anything, but emotionally, it felt as though, I don't know, I'd taken action somehow.
Right.
And
like,
again,
would you say maybe like feeling like it was something that you actually had control over?
Yeah, that's probably right. I mean, at the time, I wasn't, in a stage where I could sort of conceptualize all of this. It was just, I hurt, do this, feel strange, but all right after the other side of it, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I likened this, and again, I don't know how true it is, like going back to when I was a little kid. You knew that something were coming. You knew it was going to happen. And you get to the point where you just think, look, just beat me up and I've done with it.
Right.
Because you knew it was over then.
Yeah.
And so there was that sort of aftermath effect, if you like. I don't know what the word would be. And I'd sort of think, oh, all right, well, I've done this. And then I just get on with my day.
Yeah.
Or, it wasn't a thing. And then it'd go through some sort of emotional cycle, and then a few days would go past, and I'd start feeling sad and upset or whatever the things were. And it became a bit of a crutch, in a way.
Yeah.
And, then I sort of, weirdly enough, I started to make a bit of a persona out of it. Now, this was one. Do you remember the Sex Pistols, punk rock group?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They had a bass player called Sid Vicious. Now, Sid Vicious, he used to, on stage, he'd carve himself up with a beer bottle and things like that. He looked horrific. And so I ended up doing things like this in front of people. And it was making a joke of it. But what was behind that? I was feeling sad. Again, like, when I say it out loud now, I can't fully explain it. It's, I don't know. I think I was, maybe trying to market myself as a psycho, or I don't even know what, but you do stupid things when you're young, don't you? And, and socially, I was an absolute mess.
Right.
I was just not that wise. I think I just wanted somebody to come up to me and say, look, man, are you all right?
Yeah.
So I could say, no, I'm really not. But nobody did,
Yeah.
And I'm not, looking back, I'm not surprised. I mean, how do you have that conversation when you're like 19 years old? So that's true. That was sort of the situation there, because I just wouldn't talk to people. I was so tightly wound that, like, for many years, that people said the wrong thing to me at the wrong point or whatever, and I'd just fold. I was in tears. I was done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so, then you got a little older and you became a chef.
Yeah.
And you've even talked about, when becoming a chef, kind of, you felt like you came with an attitude. Yeah. Was that like confidence or camouflage?
I think a bit of both. I mean, if I can dial it back a few steps, I mean, just like around this 19, 20-year-olds, I then started using speed and ecstasy, going out in clubs,
okay.
And so it was one of them, I just couldn't shut up. Once it were like somebody had turned a tap on. So, all these years and years of things that I'd wanted to say or make sense of, and I didn't. And it all came out in a torrent. And, like now, you could have punched me in the face to shut me up, and I'd have started again in 6 seconds again. I just had so much that I wanted to say. And so it was around about then that the self-harming stopped, because I'd suddenly found a way to, I don't know, unleash something, And I was quite lucky in that after a while, I actually found a few friends. I mean, again, that sort of arena in clubs, everyone's best friends at 2:00 in the morning, You're all Yeah, you're all on the same sort of wavelength, as it were.
Right.
So, yeah, I found a couple of mates who, yeah, I could talk about what had gone on and things like that, and vice
Yeah.
versa. And I thought, you know what? It feels good to talk here. And then,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I did a bit of that. And then it wasn't long after then that I started, catering college and came into, yeah, I started working in kitchens. And at the time, it was very in fashion. Food had started making a bit of a revival, and the idea of a chef being like this shouty drill sergeant guy, it was, that was the thing. And so
Like Gordon Ramsay.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I bought into that very much. And it was one where all of a sudden I had authority. Now, I throughout my life, I'd not been really listened to. I was never the most popular kid. I was never the toughest kid. I was never the smartest kid. You know what I mean? I always skated through and I did all right. But yeah, I was never, or it felt to me like I was never really that much of anything. So all of a sudden, I've got a title, I've got authority. People do what I say, that kind of thing. So, and it was, I liken it to like a weak person's interpretation of strength. So it was, I became very shouty, and it was, you will fucking do what I say. That kind of talk. That, yeah. I mean, I think I was over promoted as well. I mean, at the time, what was I, 22 years old? I had no real experience of life and dealing with people and what have you. And I was already on a back foot because, well, like we've discussed, socially I was inept. I just sort of, I suppose that like young kids do, you think you've got a title, oh, well, I'll just tell them what to do. And people will automatically follow suit and do that. And that's the end of the story. And I suppose, at the time, I didn't have anybody keeping me in check. And I didn't have anybody really that, would pull me to the side and say, look, man, this is not ideal. I suppose a mentor kind of figure, if you like. Because, I mean, I sort of shunned, like my parents and what have you. I didn't go and talk to them. The people that I hung around with were, well, the majority of them were the staff that worked under me. So they're not going to pull me up and say, that I was out of order.
Right.
So you just carry on going through life thinking, all right, well, I've got this made. I'm the guy. I'm in charge. I'm doing these things. And I don't know. I look back now and I do cringe a lot in the ways that I spoke to people, the ways that I acted. A lot of times, I just run my mouth and what have you. I would think nothing of somebody else's feelings. And then it'd be, oh, well, I'm just saying it like it is. When in reality, I wasn't. I was just running my mouth with no forethought.
Right. Right.
It was that, because I think in my mind, I justified it by, for years, I wasn't given the opportunity to say my bit. Well, now it's my time to shine and you will listen to me. That was the stance that I took.
Right. And it feels powerful.
Yeah.
At the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
For sure. When you actually started to realize that you had turned into a bully, I mean, that's rare honesty. Do you remember when you first kind of admitted it to yourself?
Oh, this was much later. Much later.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of say I started growing up at 40.
I love that.
Yeah. Oh, it was a weird thing. I mean, this carried on. After this, again, there was still a lot of pain inside. There's still a lot of hurt that I'd not looked at. And I it was, I'd go out drinking, I'd go out drugging, or I'd go out buying things I couldn't afford, whatever it was, kidding myself that I was having a good time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was just masking,
Right.
And I was very good at arguing, if that makes anything. It's not really something to brag about, but I was quite quick, to cut somebody down. I could come up with a quick answer. And so, that's sort of how I went through life, acting as though I'm all knowledgeable, I'm bulletproof. Don't say anything to me because I'll just whip it back at you and I'll win the conversation, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was, I was just like some overgrown adolescent, really. just going through life like that, assuming that as you get older, that wisdom naturally occurs. That, all right, so you hit 30. All right, well, you're at a 30 level of smart and you just know things. That kind of thinking, rather than actually taking the time to, just to learn about life. And I think as well, I was very avoidant in a lot of ways. I was very sort of front facing on things. And if there was any introspection, it tended to go down the self-loathing route. Oh, you're not good at this, you're not good enough at that kind of thing. So I'd do that. I'd have a little bit of self-pity or whatever you want to call it. And then the next day I'd just be even more bullshit, even more of, I'd puffing
Just
myself
like
up.
overcompensate.
Yeah, very much. So, I mean, it wasn't until way later until I managed to get out of the kitchen catering business and what have you, and I retrained as a social worker. And
wow.
I mean, I was talking to a chap near, and he said it'll change you in a lot of ways. And so I'm like, yeah, all right, yeah, whatever. But I'm doing the readings, and especially the psych papers, and it was like there were so many little light bulbs going off in my head. Oh shit, I do that. Wow, this is me. It was like things had made sense, I started to learn about attachment theory and such like. And so, I just, I don't know, I went crazy, but it was like all of a sudden I'd learned a lot of reasons why I do the things I do. And I suppose that's one where then I directed a lot of anger towards my parents at that stage. It was then very much, oh, these things happened. This is your fault why it's like this, So it wasn't, how can I put it? I don't know. It was just basically me shifting one set of blame to somebody else. And that had been a pattern for many, many years. And then, I mean, that didn't fully go away, but the more I looked through things, and then I started having to acknowledge a few things. And it was at this point where I just sort of thought, these were not good behaviors. I mean, I suppose by this point, what would I say? My daughter was 6, 7 years old. Like, and when she came along, everything changed for me. My outlook, because it was that. I suppose when people have a kid, I want to be the best parent I can be. I want my kid to be proud of me, and that held. But I didn't have the skills at that point. So I was, I learned to be a lot more patient. I learned, a lot of things. I was, naturally around your child, you are indulgent, you are caring, you do, you do step up. But it wasn't, I say, until the learnings, until I acknowledged where I'd gone wrong in the past, that I could start actually fixing it. So, I suppose it was then that I look back on my time, and I don't know, I felt an overwhelming urge to apologize to people. Because there were a lot of people I'd been really awful to,
And
it's one of them, like, for a while I did get down on myself, because, I mean, I can look at myself now and I think I'm a good guy, and I care
Right.
about people. It worries me, but I didn't always behave in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I look back and thought, I think a lot of that pain and what have you that I felt must have been on some level that I knew what I was doing was at odds with how I actually was. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
It's, and whether I realized it at the time and could put it into words, my gut was telling me that something's not right here.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so yeah.
And you mentioned about your daughter, when she was born, and that really changed a lot for you. Becoming obviously, getting married, becoming a partner, and then becoming a parent, while still unhealed, really. Looking back, were you loving how you wanted to, or how you knew how to do?
Yeah, I think it was very much how I knew how to do. I had,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I realize, like I was saying before, how you think when you get older that wisdom naturally happens. Well, having looked back, I think that was I met somebody, we moved in together, we got engaged, we got married, we had a child. And it's like these little steps on the game of life. And I was doing it that way. It was like I was leveling up rather than this is what I absolutely want with my life. And I do feel awful saying that now, because that feels really, really reductive. And also it does sound a bit disrespectful to my ex-wife. And that's not, it's not my intention. And I did 100% go into it with best intentions. But I suppose, like with anything, it's, hindsight is a wonderful teacher.
Right.
And yeah, it was only when I started applying this critical lens to myself that I thought, yeah, if I was to do anything like this again, that's something that, would be different, or what have you. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we got married. Yeah, my daughter was born, it'd be, nigh on 18 months after we got married. And yeah, from the moment I saw her, I adored her, Well, still do.
Oh, yeah.
I better check that. And yeah, I think as well, I don't know, it sounds awful, but I do think my ex-wife was a little bit jealous as well, because I was a doting dad. I was there for all of it, and my ex not so much. I mean, we'd argue and struggle, but I mean, my ex had her own, issues growing up as well. So neither of us was great at this. We didn't deal with things. We'd argue, but it was just attack on either side.
Yeah.
We didn't sort things out. We just ran out of steam, and everything was calm for a few weeks. But then you'd feel a build up of something, and then same cycle. So yeah, it was that, and I don't know. I at the time just didn't have a clue how to address it, and also, I mean, I was quite conflict avoidant as well. That's something I learned from a young age. You don't ask the questions that might annoy somebody, that might set somebody off, because, well, it never ended well for me. So it was that. And I like I said, I didn't realize it. I wasn't actively doing this. It was just more, I suppose, a habit I'd learned, one of these little survival skills you get when you're a kid that don't serve you anymore in adulthood. But I'd not learned how to change that or to cast that off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things that you said I believe it was in your submission, and
Mm,
it really stuck with me because you said that you like yourself now, and the reason that I guess that really jumped out at me is because that's something that so many people struggle with, myself included,
mm,
of even just realizing sometimes that we don't really like ourselves,
mm,
you know,
yeah,
and then if we don't, to make the changes that are necessary, because it's really, really hard
mm,
to admit, even just to yourself, even if no one else is listening, but to
mm,
tell yourself that, hey, these are the things that are not good about you, things that you
mm,
should really work on.
yeah,
And you were able to do that and
mm,
put in the work. Um, when you know when you kind of got to that point where you realized, like, hey, I like myself now. Did
mm.
you ever feel like in the beginning of like feeling that felt suspicious almost,
Oh
or were
yeah.
you just kind of taking it as it came?
Um, yeah. I think being able to say out loud something like, I actually like myself. Now, it just felt very bizarre. And even now,
Right.
I mean, I struggle to take compliments, you know?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
don't think that I'm unique in that respect, because sometimes we do bristle at that, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, but I was in the past, because I didn't really like myself, or because I thought, I had only got where I'd got or done what I'd done because I got lucky, or I managed to cheat my way into something, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I didn't take compliments at all. I would disregard.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, it took a long time to do, because it, I don't know, I suppose even growing up, it wasn't the done thing to be, to say that actually I'm good at this, and not
Mhm.
necessarily being boastful, but acknowledgement.
Mhm.
But it would be, I mean, over here in New Zealand, they have a version of it. They call it tall poppy syndrome. Now,
Mhm.
I don't know. They seem so very proud of it, but to me, it just seems like jealousy and bitterness and cutting down somebody who wants to try.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and this one, I mean, I'll be honest. I was, for the longest time, Americans used to freak me out, and very, very, that confidence, and
Yeah.
it wasn't arrogance. It was, yeah, this is me. This is what I'm about, and it was that.
Right.
Whereas I would, where I grew up, it was very northern working class, and like the Smiths, they were from just down the road. It was that
Mhm.
kind of atmosphere. You don't
Mhm.
get above
Mhm.
yourself, and if you do, then there'll be quickly somebody there to cut you down.
Yeah.
So that was how I came up, but also added to the fact that, again, all this other stuff in the background just
Mhm.
led to somebody who never really honestly acknowledged that, you know what, actually, you've done well at this, and you should pat
Yeah.
yourself on the back for it. And yeah,
Right.
because this is part of, like what I said, when I was younger, this bravado. I'd come up with this cocky bullshit, this act, this, I'm
Right.
ace at this, I'm great at this, but I knew that it was all built on sand, that it was nonsense. That was me
Yeah.
trying to puff myself up. So
Mhm.
that continued through life. I just stopped saying things. I stopped with the cockiness, but I still
Yeah.
had the negative self-belief inside.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, it was, again, after I finally got separated, I remember I ended up meeting somebody, and she was a bit further along with the self-development and all that than me. So I went to go and see a therapist.
Mhm.
And I remember one thing that she did say to me that stuck forever: put the facts on trial. And so what she was saying is, because I'd often spiral and get down on things and just like overthink and over
Yeah.
catastrophize. or I'd get back into this. Oh, well, you're no good at this anyway. That guy's better than you. You only got this because, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. But it was like, she said, when you're doing that, just stop. 10 seconds in, 2 minutes in, whatever it is, catch yourself and stop. And then say, put the facts on trial. And she had me laminate that on a piece of paper. Put it on the monitor of my computer at work, whatever it was. So it became quite fixed in my mind.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, and it worked for me. I mean, let's have it right. I at the time thought emotional mastery was just pushing it down and not letting people see that it affected me. Whereas in reality, it's miles away from that. And we all still have it these days, I mean, I could say now that I'm, healed from a lot of things, and that may be true, but that doesn't mean every day's perfect. I still have these days where you're like, nah, today's not it. Or you default to these ways of thinking that you've done before. Yeah. But I think having these little tools to be able to stop and say, even to say, look, man, today's not the day. Just don't get into anything big. If you can, go home, stick on your Disney Plus and get some snacks, whatever it looks like. Today's not the day.
Right.
Being able to say that, look, man, you're all right still. It's just, it's a shit day. You're not a shit person for having it, though.
Right.
And that's where I came to.
Yeah. What do you think, like, how can someone take accountability without going down that, spiral of self-hatred?
Well, for me, I found, how would I talk if my best mate came to me with these same things? What advice would I give that best friend?
Yeah.
Would I say, you're worthless, you're useless, you are just awful, you're a terrible person? But no, I wouldn't. I'd listen, I'd talk to him, look, man, we all have a bad day. Look, we can all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Things like that. And yet I never gave myself that slack.
Right.
And that was the kicker for me, things like that. I mean, I at first, went to therapy and thought I'd walk in there and she'd give me like 3 steps for life. Just do this, and you walk out brand new. I had the totally wrong idea.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I know, right? Yeah. And that was it. But it was like, I don't know. I suppose there are certain few things like, that what advice you'd give your mate or what have you that worked for me. Little tools where I can catch myself and I suppose, do like a bit of a, I don't know, if you want to do a net positive thing for yourself. Because I suppose this is the other way as well. I'd never stopped to pay attention to how I work or what works for me. What do I actually want?
Right.
It was all about pleasing other people and hoping that they liked me based on whatever performance it was I was playing.
Right.
And I mean, this comes back to something like when I first got separated. A friend of mine said, like, oh, starting over and whatever, you got your life. What's it going to look like? And I genuinely didn't know. Not because I'd got over, that I was sort of so massively codependent on my ex. It wasn't that. It was that I'd moved away from, things that I liked, or I just didn't try them, or whatever it was. And I'd never stopped to find out who I was. You know what I mean? And it sounds like such a wank phrase, this finding yourself, but I'll buy into it in that I had to figure out at 40 odd years old who I actually was, who me was,
right.
Yeah, but it was sort of until I figured those things out, how could I sort out the rest? But I was going about it the other way, you know what I mean? I wanted the magic bullet solutions. without
Mm-hmm.
doing all the digging around underneath.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted the quick panacea. I'll go in, I'll just, throw down a couple of $100 on the table, get me therapy session, and walk out. I'm sorted. And
Yeah.
yeah, but it was how
like buying
wrong
a
I
new
was.
car.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I went in thinking, that it'd be these kind of things, and God, how wrong I was. Oh, I had
Yeah.
I had some sessions I came out of there, and I thought, like, I hated myself even more. You know, it was bizarre. I'm thinking, and I'm paid for this.
Right.
But it was, yeah, it was. I suppose ultimately it was, I don't know. You're not well. You throw up, and you suddenly
Yeah.
feel better. You started
Yeah.
purging yourself of all this
Yeah.
other stuff. It's that. I mean, I
Yeah.
liken it to that now, and I can laugh about it now. But at the time,
Yeah.
I was like, I just want this done. I want to get to the other side of this, whatever this
Right.
is.
Right.
Please let me deal with all this crap very, very quickly. So then I'm on the other
Right.
side of it, happy.
Yep. I
Oh.
used to say the same thing. Like
Mm,
one time I was going to therapy for, several weeks, and
mm,
it just kind of hit me one day that, yeah, I walk in there, with something on my mind to talk about. And the next thing I know, it's an hour later and I'm sitting in the parking lot and I feel worse. Like,
yeah.
how is this helping me? But it really was,
Mm,
when you put it all together, it really does help.
yeah.
You just got to keep going.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
you've met a lot of people that, don't know how to give or accept love. They're just
Mm,
sort of existing.
mm.
What advice would you give them, to kind of start that work?
I think actually be vulnerable. And I know that sounds a lot easier than it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Insofar as I believed that I had vulnerability nailed, in that I'd tell a couple of hard luck stories from my youth and what have you, and I had it down
Mm-hmm.
pat. These sad stories and I thought, well, I tell people this, and they'll see that other side, that vulnerable side of me. But I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't being vulnerable. That was again part of an act, and I wasn't trying to be duplicitous. I wasn't trying to, trick anybody. But I'd become so. In fact, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't know how to be truly vulnerable with somebody.
Yeah.
I thought, I'll tell you these little stories here, and you'll see that, rather than it being, even sharing the things that I really don't want to admit to myself,
Mm-hmm.
among other things, and being, I suppose, willing to be rejected, if that sounds right. That's probably not
Yeah.
what I'm thinking, but in the past, it'd always be trying to backpedal and say and do the right things so that people didn't leave me, that I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
too much that they'd just abandon me.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I suppose another thing, I've always equated honesty and loyalty with love,
Mm-hmm.
insofar as, I don't know, I struggle if people are lying to me, because
Mm-hmm.
I then think that you know that people have been dishonest about other things, and I'll go into that spiral. These trust
Yeah.
issues that keep coming up, and this is, something I'm still trying to work on. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I sort of felt like, well, I've put my soul on a plate, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
You can't walk away from me now. That
Right.
was, it was, I don't know. I'm not saying it's part of the playbook, but looking back, then yeah, it possibly was. Like
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
it wasn't meant to be dishonest or conniving or anything like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was just, I suppose, how I'd got through life And I'd had to come up with all this stuff myself. I had
Mm-hmm.
nobody guiding me. I picked it up from TV and self-help books, trying to
Mm-hmm.
construct the image of a well-adjusted person,
Right.
and yeah, sometimes it fell over, but I didn't have a book on that. And the movies don't tell you how to deal with that. They
Right.
just, happily ever
You're
after
just out
that.
there. Yeah, you're just out there winging it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for me, I think, yeah, definitely vulnerability and being, yeah, I can't control all of it, and I've got to be okay with that. In the, I don't know, I suppose that makes me sound different. I'm not a particularly controlling person, but I think, you try and stack the odds in your favor.
Right.
Like the classic overthinking thing. I'm about to walk into a conversation with a person. Prior to that, I've already had 10 conversations in my head how this is going to play out. It never goes that way, you understand?
I know.
But this is, me trying to stack the deck so that if I'm asked something, I'll have the right answer.
Yes.
Because I've only just rattled that through. So yeah, now I've got to a point where I'm all right in that I know that I'm not everyone's flavor, and that's okay. I don't try to be. I don't try to be, offensive, or I don't try and push people away. It's not that. But not everyone likes me. Let's have it right. I don't like everybody.
Right.
And it's not a personal thing. It's not, you just, some people like strawberry, some like chocolate, it just is.
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, just accepting that, I don't have to be all things to all people. And sometimes, you don't always get what you want for Christmas. It doesn't always go the way that you want it to. And, that might hurt. That might feel awful. That might be the opposite of what you want. But, sometimes that's just how it has to be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When things get heavy now, you'd mentioned on your submission that you like to surf, and you and your friends insult each other. So how healing is it, affectionately bullying with consent?
Well, this is another thing. Like, when we first moved over to New Zealand, it was like just over 15 years ago now. So many people were like, "Oh, we'll get on really great. I love English humour." And I thought, all right, okay. They don't like it so much when they're on the other side of it, So, because they've watched a couple of episodes of Blackadder or Fawlty Towers or whatever, and you think, no, like, as in the main English, you cut each other down. It's that very sardonic sort of, and the best insult wins. If anybody from outside of your circle starts it, then no, there's a problem. With some of my friends, I suppose that's how you know you're safe. That you can say these things because you know that it's not meant to be hurtful.
Right.
That sounds quite, an odd way of doing it, but it works for us somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so, there's that. And for me, that's how I know I'm around my people. I still often feel like I upset people. I put my foot in my mouth. I say things, again, like I said before, I value honesty. Now, I'm not for brutal honesty because I'm not looking to upset, but I don't know. I don't like to sugarcoat. I don't like to, I don't like to be dishonest with people.
Right.
But not everyone likes that. And I mean, I suppose, my people know me and know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I don't, and so, I suppose, like I said, this piss taking or whatever you want to say. It's, I don't know, it feels safe to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But by the same token, the same people who can say things like that to me are the same ones who are going to pull me up and say, actually, Lee, you were out of order at that point. You needed to do this differently. Do you know what I mean? And I would accept that because that's the level of trust and safety I have with people.
Right.
You know, it might not work for everybody, but it works for me and my particular friend group.
Yeah, I love that. So, yeah. I love it. Yeah. And with surfing, what does that do for you and your nervous system?
Oh, well, that came about. It was a few years ago. Now, I said I'm now a social worker, and I work predominantly with youth offenders. Now, a few years ago, there just seemed to be this massive upswing in car crime. So car thefts, ram raids, all this kind of thing. And these kids were it was like a real life GTA.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite fun. So we'd go into work each morning and we were, my colleagues and I, fully expecting that one day we'd go in and we'd hear that some kid had died in a crash or something. So we were all on edge and work was just building up. So we were all struggling. Now, I remember at the time I was on the dating apps, which is a whole other ball game. And I remember I was just chatting, text chatting to this woman, and she's saying, what are you into? What do you want to do? And all. I says, you know what? I wouldn't mind learning to surf one day. And she said, well, why don't you make one day today? And I was like, oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, all right, then I will do. And not really thinking anything of it. Anyway, I'm at work on this particular day and everything's just spinning out. When you start getting them pressure headaches and things like that, It's one of those days. And so I just sort of said, right, I'm stepping away from my computer, my work phone. So I'm just going having a cup of tea. I'm just going to get my head on straight. And I had my personal phone with me and I thought, you know what? Impulse decision. I booked myself some surfing lessons, ordered a board, thought, right, I'm going to do that this weekend. So I set that up and it was one of those things that I just thought, right, I'm going to do this. Now, I went down there and again, there was a line of us, just all there, all novices, just, feeling a bit self-conscious in our little tight wetsuits and things like that. I remember I got in and, on the TV, they make it look so easy, don't they? For me, just focusing on not drowning. It just cleared my head of everything. All that other stuff just went away, And it was like, wow. It was just as though I felt that was the first peace I'd felt in months.
Yeah.
Because, like all of this work stuff's going on. I'd wake up at 2:00 in the morning, worrying about some of these kids on my caseload and what have you. And so, I was, and I wasn't alone in that. My colleagues also, we were all worried. And so this opportunity of, wow, I've found something that can just quiet the noise for a bit. And being in the sea, you do quickly realize how insignificant you are.
Right.
Sea will throw you about and all that kind of stuff. You've no control over it. So you just go with it. And it sort of became a bit of a metaphor for life. I know that sounds really twee, but just, right, just grab your board and just go with it, see what happens.
Yeah.
And so that became a sort of pivotal point for me. I went full on mindfulness with it as well, So I go at sunrise. So because there's no people there, I can get a park. I can, go whichever waves I want because there's nobody else there. Watching the sun come up, just having 10 minutes, just doing the breathing, just getting myself all zen,
Yeah.
So before I've even touched water, I'm calm. I'm in my happy place.
Right.
And then, the waves are a bonus.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Awesome. Well, before we go, we like to do a little segment here called Childhood Confessions. It's
Hmm.
quick, it's harmless, and it usually explains a lot. So, Lee, I am
Oh,
dying to hear a story from your
God.
childhood. It could be anything at all.
Okay. Well, yeah. It's only a little one, but over my right eye, I've got a crescent-shaped scar. And a lot of people will ask me, what's happened there, what's gone on. And for years, I came up, like, oh yeah, I was in a fight. You should see the other guy. The reality is much, much more different. Now, when I was 3 years old, I've got a younger sister, and so she had, those old like aluminium tube strollers. Those little
Yes,
like buggy
yes.
things. Yeah, she had one of
Uh-huh.
those. And now that was at the bottom of our stairs. Now I, at 3 years old, thought if I can do something really, really difficult, then I'm going to have superpowers. Again, kids are stupid, That I was no different. But there that is. And so for me, hopping down the stairs without holding the banisters was really, really hard. And that qualified. So if I did that, then, who knew what had happened at the bottom of the stairs?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so I got down 2 stairs and then somersaulted. I just went flying. And I basically went down the stairs without touching them, head first onto my sister's stroller, and
Oh
ended
my
up
God.
knocking myself out and laid on the welcome mat. So, yeah. So for years, I'd made out what a tough guy I was. I was in this fight, I was this, that, and the other, when in reality, yeah, it was
Right.
very different.
I love
Um,
it.
so, yeah.
Well,
Uh,
it's funny that is the story that you told because it reminds me of when I was a kid.
mm,
And I don't know, I don't know if you would have seen this TV show that we had here. I don't really know if all countries get the same
mm,
shows or what, but there
mm.
used to be a show many, many years ago called MacGyver. Have you ever
Yes,
seen that?
yes, I know that one. Yeah, he used to his car would break down and he'd function
Yeah.
some tool out of a
Yes.
twig and a lollipop stick or whatever. Mm, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So my brother loved that show and he would watch
Mm,
it all the time. So I just, I was probably like, I don't know, 5, 6 years old at the time.
mm,
And well, maybe like 6 or 7. Anyway,
mm,
so I would see bits and pieces of the show and
mm,
just kind of picked up how, he was always like, figuring something out or making something work. And
mm,
he was like always, kind of doing like an operative, like secret ops type thing.
mm,
So one day I'm outside and our back patio, had like, whatever they're called, like just a sort of hole, but it was like a decorative hole that holds the awning up of the porch.
mm,
And for whatever reason, I got this rope and I tied it around my waist. And
mm,
then I like climbed up this, pole and I tied the other end to the top. And I don't know where I thought I was going or what I thought I was doing or what, but my foot slipped and I
mm.
fell off the pole. And so the
Ouch.
rope just tightened up around my waist and I'm like hanging there, but off of
Wow.
this pole. And
Mm,
so my mom happened to be, I guess, going past the kitchen or going to do the dishes or something. She
mm.
looked out the window and just sees me hanging there. And of course starts screaming. And my brother and her come running out and he had to cut me down.
Mm,
And, I just remember, them asking like, what were you doing? What were you
mm.
thinking? And I was like, I was trying to be MacGyver.
Oh,
But something, it's like you said, kids are so stupid because
yeah.
what if I had put that around my neck or
Yeah.
something like instead of my waist? I mean, oh my God, I
Mm,
don't know what, what possessed
yeah.
me to do that, but Yeah, we are definitely dumb
Yeah.
when we're when we're kids.
Yeah. I do love that we're here to laugh about it now. But this is
Right.
something I was talking to somebody the other day on an episode of my podcast, and this sort of Gen X sensibility says we've all got this list of these kind of things going on. I think
Right.
I suppose the amount of kids that I knew from school who did things, like because they'd seen something on the A Team and wanted to recreate it. And
Right.
it ended up, like setting fire to the garden shed or who would know what, all these kind of things, And it's like, oh, I don't need any more character building. I just want it to go right today. Good Lord.
Exactly.
I do love that we can laugh about it now, though.
Yeah. Oh, you have to.
Absolutely.
Well, where can everybody find you and follow you and stalk you lovingly online?
Okay, right. Well, my podcast is called Social Harmony Time to Talk. I am available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I put a new episode out every week at 6 p.m. New Zealand time on a Monday. The idea of that is, it's an open conversation, just talking about, the big things, the little things, all the bits in between. I've also got presence on Facebook under Social Harmony Time to Talk, Instagram, and now TikTok under Social Harmony Talk. And I'm in the I don't know, I'm trying to construct a YouTube channel at the moment. It's it's very much early stages, but that's going to be my 2026 thing, I think.
Okay,
So
cool.
But also under Social Harmony Talk. Yeah, that's
awesome.
me.
Awesome. And I will put links to all of your sites and social media and all that stuff on my website as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Lee, thank you seriously for coming here today and talking about your truth and not just the parts that sound good, all of it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's been nice. Thank you, Jojo. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. If you're listening and thinking, oh, that's me, please hear me. Awareness is the start. You're not doomed, you're awake. If this episode hit you right in the chest, subscribe, follow, leave a review, and send it to a friend who needs it, preferably before they do something they can't come back from. As always, remember, therapy is expensive. Share your chaos with me for free.